Everyone in to HogvilleNET YouTube Live. It's our pregame show. We're doing it live from Jose's Bar and Grill in Town on location. Arkansas Razorbacks tonight. Another matchup in Bud Walton Arena this season against a top 10 nationally ranked team, the number 8 Tennessee Volunteers. The Razorbacks are looking to build on having won the Razorbacks have won 2 of their last 3 games. This would be significant if Arkansas could pick up its second quad 1 win of the season. We know Arkansas defeated Duke, another at the time ranked 7th, still a top 10 rated team. Duke, I think 9th in the latest AP poll, but that was back in late November. If Arkansas could add this win, not only would it be a second quad 1 win, but again, Arkansas then has won 3 of its last 4 games. So it would be some momentum, looking ahead. We're not predicting an Arkansas win by saying that. Obviously, Arkansas has really struggled this season in league play. Even when you went prior to league play, it's a season that's not aimed toward an at-large bid for the NCAA tournament, which will be is likely to be the first time that has happened when you look at the previous 3 seasons. So obviously a win tonight doesn't necessarily change that. Obviously doesn't change that in of itself in a vacuum. But 3 wins in your last 4 games of Arkansas manages a way to beat Tennessee. Then allows Arkansas still a path with 7 games left in the regular season, 4 more quad 1 wins, which would all be on the road, to at least, if it could win out, in theory, we can talk about these things going in the SEC tournament to potentially have a run in the SEC tournament and then maybe be on the still somehow on a bubble for an at-large discussion. A few weeks ago, Arkansas needed to win out to have at-large considerations going into the SEC tournament, and they haven't been able to do that. That big 21-point loss at LSU still looms a bit, given that that's what Arkansas did prior to beating Georgia. An interesting game tonight for many reasons. One is I want to see what is the turnout at Bud Walton Arena. It was not good against Georgia on a Saturday, 5:00 game. It's a reflection of where the season has been for these Razorbacks. I would say 11,000 max in a venue that holds 19,200. About 8 to 10 minutes before tip-off, it was less than a third full. Around tip-off, it was around half. And again, as the game played a little bit, I think Arkansas might have gotten between 10 and 11,000. So let's see if this, having won that game, having won 2 of their last 3, and having an opponent, a top 10 ranked opponent this is a very unusual situation with Arkansas and Tennessee. This will be the first time that the Razorbacks will host Tennessee in Fayetteville and not have a return game, a home and away in the same season to play in Knoxville since the 2017-18 season. Arkansas's had several seasons where they've only played it in Knoxville and not had a home game. Last year, the teams played home and away, and Tennessee has won 2 consecutive games against the Razorbacks. So that's something that Arkansas is looking to avoid, going 0-3 there. Tennessee's one of the few teams in the SEC that has an all-time winning record in the series. It's 22-25 as it stands now, so Arkansas looks to get a little closer with a win tonight, but it's a rare opportunity for Arkansas to play Tennessee at home and not have a return game in the same season in Knoxville. So, to me, that's more than just trivial. I think it's interesting because these things are supposed to be fairly equitable. Either way, Arkansas's got its work cut out for it tonight against a very good Tennessee team. Again, ranked 8th in the country. Technically, in the loss column, I think tied with multiple teams with 3 losses in league play, with Alabama and South Carolina just ahead in the pecking order. But Tennessee's played a tough non-conference schedule, one of the best in the country. A shared opponent out of the conference was Purdue. Tennessee lost to Purdue in Maui, and we know Arkansas defeated Purdue in a game that didn't count in the exhibition season, and that was so long ago. I'm not trying to draw comparisons or compare scores, just that it's interesting that they do have a common opponent outside of the league. They also have a common opponent in the league that Arkansas has already beaten in A&M. Arkansas, we remember that was the first league win back in January. Tennessee's coming off a 16-point loss to the Aggies on the road. Similar to how Kentucky was coming in as a top-ranked team, and Arkansas lost that game. Kentucky was coming in off a road loss at A&M, and Arkansas was very competitive in that game. Different matchup. Those are some comparisons there, some similarities, but it doesn't have anything to do with might or can or likely will play out on the court tonight. I talked about the positives. If Arkansas were to win this game, it'd be the second quad one win. And again, having won 3 of their last 4, maybe can ramp something up here to close out the season and get back on the bubble somehow, with some success early in the SEC tournament. It's just an unlikely scenario, but it's one that I guess possibly still exists because this game hasn't played out. But we also have to mention if Arkansas loses tonight, 3-8 in league play, now back to break even in the overall record, 12-12. And what that would mean is with 7 SEC games left, if Arkansas loses tonight, so let's just go off that scenario, 3-8 in league play, 12-12 overall, moving forward with 7 league games left, Arkansas would only need to lose 2 more games to have a second consecutive season of a losing overall record. It would be guaranteed at that point in league play because Arkansas went 8-10 in regular season league games last year. So it locks that in if they lose tonight, 2 more, only 2 more. And if they lose tonight with only 7 more games left, if Arkansas loses 4 of those 7, they'll guarantee the first losing record overall in the program since that dreadful Pelfrey season back 15 years ago, 08-09, when that team went 2-14 in league play, had a great non-conference, much better non-conference than this Razorback team has had, but still finished with an overall losing record. We know Mike Anderson didn't have a losing record in overall at Arkansas, and certainly Musselman hasn't been close. He's a guy that's won 20-plus games in his previous 4 seasons, 20 or more games, and some of those seasons 25-plus, and a couple of them. And so this is one that's looks like it's it's a heavy lift to get to 20. It would be a heavy lift for Arkansas not only to win this game, but because this is the last quad one winning opportunity at home. The other 4 at Mississippi State coming right up on Saturday after this game. Then you got the game at A&M at some point. I think that's right after Mississippi State, midweek next week. So, if somehow Arkansas wins this game and then sweeps those 2 road games, there's some serious momentum. The net is so low, but I think if you were to start winning some of these quad one games, 3 in a row coming up, then you've got one on the road at Kentucky, and then you obviously at Alabama at the end of the year in March. So there's opportunities there. Is it realistic with this group of players, with what this team's been through? It's not. But we use words realistic, feasible, likely. No, those are really not in play here. Possible, sure. I mean, lightning could strike me right now. That's possible too. But I'm just saying, we talk about these things because that's what's left out there to go through. All right, so we kind of went through what's at stake here. Obviously for Tennessee, this is a team has a winning record away from home this year, but is coming off that 16-point loss at A&M. When I look at it statistically and matchup-wise, some of the Tennessee teams of late have had a lot of frontline size and versatility. This one doesn't have as much. But it's got so many veteran players that have been around. Dalton Connect, who's been, arguably the best player in the SEC, in SEC games for sure, averaging over 20 points per game now. I think in 10 SEC games, he's only had 1 game where he didn't score double figures, only 1 more where he didn't get at least 20, but he's got 4 of 30 or more. And some of the things he's doing as a scorer and an offensive weapon all over the half court remind me some of the work that Mason Jones did in his co-SEC Player of the Year. The difference is this guy's on a good team heading somewhere. That Arkansas team struggled with Isaiah Joe's injury and going to the SEC tournament before COVID canceled it all. Arkansas had a lot of work to do. Probably had to win the SEC tournament 5 games in 5 days to get the automatic bid. Maybe there was a slim chance at an at-large path by getting to the championship game, depending upon who you knocked off to get there. But at any rate, this next guy is really and he's doing other stuff too. I noticed his rebounds have surged, his rebounding numbers, some of his hustle play stats. He's really been a force. You look at their big man, 6'11", I'm going to butcher his name, spelled A-I-D-O-O, I do, double figure score, averaging 7+ rebounds per game. He's averaging nearly 2 blocks per game. This is not an elite shot blocking team, but if you look at the stretch of SEC play, this guy's had multiple games prior to the A&M game where I don't think he got a block shot, but prior to that, 4, 5, 6 games in a row where he had multiple blocks in games. So keep an eye on his impact inside. But when you look at Vescovi, when you look at Ziegler, you look at Josiah Jordan James, you look at all these different players that it seems like they've gotten waivers from the NCAA to have a lifetime of of seasons at Tennessee. All these guys are still around. They all are baked into why this is a very dangerous and a very good team. It's a team that on the season's about plus 12 in the scoring column, averaging nearly 80 points a game and holding teams down around 68. When you look at Tennessee's defense, holding teams on the season to 38.7% field goal shooting. It's very stingy. Doesn't even give up 16 two-point field goals per game. And, that's where Arkansas is going to have to go to. I think Arkansas is going to continue to try to play inside out and start from the inside and minimize what they've done a good job of late, the three-point attempts and attack the rim. This is a Volunteers team. I mentioned the lack of size overall on that front line. They've got some good size in certain spots in the backcourt and on the wings, and they've got some hybrid 3-4 guys that play the right way, but they'll give up offensive rebounds. It's not been one of Arkansas' strengths, but Arkansas has moved the needle lately with the hustle plays and doing some of that stuff. And this is a team that's averaging a really good offensive rebounding team. Tennessee is averaging nearly 12 a game, but they're giving up between 11 and 12 a game. And this is where Arkansas is going to have to stick to its knitting, not bail out taking threes. It's a good defensive team in terms of not only the overall field goal percentage, but inside the arc and out. That's why Arkansas cannot play to this, settling for threes. They're going to have to attack the basket, get on that offensive glass, and this is also a Tennessee team that's not elite at preventing teams from getting to the foul line. And we know that's where Arkansas can be really good. They can't just be good on the offensive glass and getting to the line, though. Arkansas's got to minimize fouls and so that they can build a discrepancy, so they can build a positive margin and free throws attempted, because the glass are going to have their own struggles keeping Tennessee off the offensive glass. The goal here is to see that Tennessee's not a great defensive rebounding teams in terms of defensive rebound percentage and how much they give up on the old glass. Arkansas's got to find a way to match or maybe even be better there, but get to the foul line and win those battles. I think the other thing is, as good as this team is and as good as these players are, really a 7 deep when you look at what Tennessee does, and so many veteran guys that have been Vols for a while and had success there. Outside of Connect, there's not a guy. If you can have a Tremont Mark have one of his better games, and Arkansas needs to get off to a good start. That's kind of been prominent in these close game victories Arkansas had, where they built leads and had to hold on, but they've gotten off to good first half starts. Arkansas needs that, and they need a guy like Tremont Mark probably to have one of his better games, because I don't see a path for Arkansas shutting down Dalton. The transfer from mid-major Northern Colorado, we have to give him credit. He's been a really good player. Excuse me. So when you look at it from percentages in Arkansas's offense, we know that LSU game, the previous game to Georgia, was just a terrible game when you look at percentages, offense and defense, 21-point loss. But if you look at the defensive effort in the first half against Kentucky and much of the second half, offense wasn't good. When you look at the offense and defense first half against Mizzou in that road win, horrible team, great matchup for Arkansas, but both were clicking in the first half. The offense continued in the second half, not so much the defense. You look back at Georgia, Arkansas built a 10-point first half lead, led by 5 at the break, led by 12 early in the second half, had 3 different 1-point deficits in the final 3 minutes and 47 seconds of that game. So obviously built a double-digit lead in the second half, wasn't able to maintain it, and actually had to come from behind late. But the thing was, the defense was really good in the first half of that game, not so much in the second half, and the offense was good in both halves against Georgia, especially the ball movement. And this is where I think Arkansas, when you look at a team that holds teams down in field goal percentage, you don't want to fall back into some bad habits of playing hero ball and where the ball movement's not good and you get stagnant. You've got to attack that, put pressure on the rim, attack that paint, but you can't just do it dribble drive first. You've got to move that ball, get those solid, smart, savvy veteran defenders. I don't care how good they are. If you have good ball movement, they're not going to be in their best positions. And you'll get some easy scores off of that. Arkansas's got to find ways to do that. And the more they pressure the rim, the better their chances are to get on the glass and to also get to that free throw line. So I think those are keys for Arkansas offensively. I don't know that we'll see against this defense. Kentucky's defense was porous, and Arkansas could not shoot, had an awful game offensively. But they were more physical inside because of that matchup. I think this will be a matchup where in previous seasons we've seen Tennessee be really physical with Arkansas, really physical. They really win in those battles. I think this might be a game where Arkansas can compete in the physicality part of it, which means if that's the case, you've got to then mentally be prepared to attack again, be in attack mode and not settle for threes. And so I think on offense that's a key. I think hitting the glass is a key. And then on defense, Arkansas's had success. This is an Arkansas team that has had success lately of generating steals and live ball turnovers. I don't know how that plays out tonight. This is not a Tennessee team that turns it over a lot, only 10 per game. They're one of the best in the country at kind of minimizing their own turnovers. And they're really good at dishing out assists, 17 per game. They're not great in any field goal percentage area. They're decent, respectable, but they know how to play together, move the ball, and set guys up for scores. And so, can Arkansas continue to generate steals and create easy scores for themselves in transition and in fast break off of live ball turnovers? It's just Arkansas has not been able to consistently do that, and this is a different team obviously than Georgia, so you can't bank on the fact that Arkansas's had 2 or 3 games. But when you look at it collectively, and I wrote about this in my Stock Rogers report, going back to the Kentucky game, Arkansas's +5 in the offensive rebounding battles. That's a positive. So we're talking about offensive rebounds. 4 games, Arkansas split them in the overall record 2-2, but they've gotten better at hitting the glass. They've started to generate turnovers. 32 steals in these last 4 games. That's 8 per game. This is a team that ranked, near the bottom in the 300s in generating steals, hovered in the high 4s, low 5s most of the season. Now they're in the up, they're in the higher end of the 5s, get closer to 6 per game because they've averaged 8 steals in their last 4 games. Can they bottle that? Can they carry that over tonight? That would be a big deal. I talked about the crowd size. I think that's another player for Arkansas. If it's a jam-packed house and Arkansas can get off to a good start and find a way to manage itself. Now, we've seen Arkansas get blown out at home against a really good Auburn team that had a lot of veteran returning guys and just dissected Arkansas in that second half and blew out to a 32-point win record loss. We've seen Arkansas get handled by a really good South Carolina team at home and was down by 19 points in the second half and ended up losing by 13. But it was a game kind of like the Oklahoma game where the margin didn't really tell how thoroughly the other team kind of dominated that game. We've seen Arkansas on the road get just blown out at Florida. We've seen Arkansas on the road get blown out at Ole Miss. We've seen Arkansas on the road get blown out at LSU. When I go back to the home blowouts, when I go back to those against Auburn and South Carolina, what they have in common are those are 2 teams that are in the top 4 or 5 when you look at the SEC records and the standings. And Tennessee checks that box. A&M doesn't. A&M was a good team and still a good team and had some big wins, including that went over Tennessee, but they haven't been quite that dominant, and Arkansas found a way to win that game at home. Georgia certainly was on a 4-game losing streak, now 5 losses in a row after Arkansas had to squeak out a win against a team that held a lead 3 times by a point in the final 3:47. So by no means am I mistaking what this opponent is versus what some of the Arkansas's recent success came against. Mizzou, worst team in the league. Georgia, not trending in the right way and in the bottom of the league now when you look at it from a record standpoint. So, I keep an eye on those things when I realize this is a different team. But we still have the Duke win from November. I know it was so long ago. Even the Purdue, Arkansas was competitive against the then top 10 ranked Kentucky team and gave itself a chance in the second half, although Kentucky's been on a slide and bounced back with that big win in its most recent game. But, so because there's been 3, 4 examples of Arkansas hanging in there and even having a win or 2 against top 10 ranked teams, you leave the door cracked for that. Most people think, if you look at the betting lines and those things, it seems obvious that Tennessee's a heavy favorite. Most people think that the Vols are going to come in and really beat Arkansas up tonight, which is obviously possible. But I wanted to go through some of the matchups. I think Ziegler, Vescovi, James are a problem for Arkansas because those guys consistently play to the system that has worked at Tennessee under Rick Barnes, and they understand how to take it on the road. Arkansas still doesn't consistently show, even at home, or even when matchups are favorable, they can play well together for 40 minutes. That's why we see even against more inferior teams, they build up big leads and can't even hold those. They end up having to hold on in the end. So all those things kind of conspire to make you think it's not only a heavy lift, but a very unlikely opportunity for Arkansas tonight. But that's why you play the game. We'll see. All right, we're almost 20 minutes in. We're not going to go deep on it tonight. I went through, what I consider some of the, team, some of the things as a team that Arkansas will be looking at. Individually, I went through some of the names for Tennessee. I mentioned Jamon Mark L. Ellis is another one I want to jump to real quick. When Arkansas had success and wins over Duke, A&M, and most recently against Georgia, those were all at home, and he had 3 of his better games of the season. In fact, I would say they were his 3 best games in the season. And then those are Arkansas's best 3 wins on the season. So someone other than Tremont Mark needs to have a big game tonight. L. Ellis is the first guy you look to because Arkansas has been really shaky at the lead guard spot. And the only exceptions to that have been when he's had really good games, even if he wasn't always sparkling and spectacular as a lead guard in those games. He found ways to have impact. In this last outing, team high matching 15 points, team high matching 5 rebounds, team high matching 3 assists, team high matching 3 steals, only 1 turnover in 37 minutes, a positive box plus. And he was a guy that I thought when he made 3 of 6 from 3, it was only his second game all season long to knock down multiple threes in a game. And he was Arkansas's leader on a night. They only made as a team 5 of 14. Well, he had 3 of 6 of that. I'm not saying he's got to do all of that tonight, but he's got to be good in multiple areas. He probably had his best defensive game against Georgia. Maybe there's some momentum here. He didn't play against Missouri or LSU. So he's been so up and down. It's like blistering hot or ice cold with him. There's not been, even a middle ground mediocre. It's either been 0 factor or big factor. And so if Arkansas could get him, Menifield's had a couple of big scoring games when you look back at Mizzou and these wins over Mizzou and Georgia. It will not be as easy for him against this defense and how sound this team plays because they communicate and they're connected more so than some of these other teams. Menifield's still a young player. He doesn't even have a full body of work under his belt at Arkansas because he's effectively missed half the season, but he has been playing and at times has played well in league play. Overall, I'd say not so much, but lately, at least offensively. But he's a guy that you would hope maybe would step up tonight as well. Devo Davis is back in the mix. He had a strong floor game this last night out, and I could argue that Arkansas doesn't win that game without him. That's probably true. I don't know that for a fact, but maybe he's a guy that steps up tonight and does a little more than he was doing prior to his 3-game absence, and even more than he did in this previous game. So, we can look at a guy like Jalen Graham that's given Arkansas some offense. I still think he's been an underwhelming rebounder. I think he's still very hit and miss and not reliable defensively, but he will make some playmaking type stuff defensively with some blocks and steals here and there. When he's not getting busted on assignments, if the rebounding is a concern. But in a game like this where you're against a team that will give up some offensive rebounds, maybe he slides in there and does some things. And the name that I decided to save on for last is Mekhi Mitchell, because he's probably been the guy, and I wrote about this in my stock riser report, he's probably been the one guy with Trevor Brazile out he's obviously been the one guy who has stepped up at both ends. When you look at everything, he had the 2 double-doubles in these last 4 games. He's scored in double figures in each of these last 4 games. He's averaging nearly 14 points, nearly 9 rebounds per game in the last 4. I mentioned the 2 double-doubles, but he's blocking shots, 3 big blocks against Georgia. He's doing other things. He's a good passer at that 5 spot. He's been playing with more, he gives Arkansas more physicality than anybody they can put on the court. The other thing is he's knocking down free throws, and he's getting there in volume. That's not something you can rely on him through most of his career and most of his time at Arkansas. But lately he's been doing that. Very good at the free throw line. I think in these last 4 games, 21 of 26. So nearly 7 attempts per game, and he's knocking them down over 80%. So Mekhi Mitchell has been, if you want to say that Arkansas is the same old, and some of this stuff's misleading, and when they play good teams, they'll get exposed. That may end up being true from a team standpoint. But from individual standpoint, I would say the one guy who's been consistently better in the absence of Trevor Brazile is Mekhi Mitchell. So that's at least a foundation to work on. Maybe Mekhi has a big night tonight. But I think against a team like this, you need to continue to see. And Musselman is, by the way, something else I wrote about, has been able to shrink down his rotations. If this turns into a game where he's playing 12, 11, 13 guys and 14 guys in both halves, it means things are not working well. So we'll see again. I think it's key for Arkansas to get off to a good start. I think Arkansas needs, scoring production. They were balanced this game against Georgia. I think at least 3 guys. You'd like more than that, 4 or 5 in double figures, but at least 3. And you need, again, if there's a path, the way that Tennessee's defense is set up, where Arkansas can get clean looks from 3, really clean looks, and it makes sense, and they're not settling for them or taking them early, I'm not opposed to, putting up 12 to 15 in a game. I think Arkansas gets in trouble when it's 20 or more, and it usually means that they've either settled for them or other stuff. The other team's just too good. But again, most of the time, my eye test has told me Arkansas settled for a lot. And this is why a guy like Caleb Battle struggles with playing time and consistency. He's a guy you'd like to be better offensively, not just looking for his own shot, but setting up other guys. But also, I think sometimes he settles, and some of his drives have been wild and out of control as he tries to draw contact. I think he's rushed a lot of threes, and sometimes guys like that, J.D. Notae, superior player, but also had some tendencies and bad habits. But Battle's not been good enough defensively to be able to ride with that. So Arkansas needs, a guy like El Ellis, a guy like Minifield. We'll see if Layden Blocker comes in and helps Arkansas. Chandler Lawson starts a lot. Maybe this is a game where the matchup favors stuff that he does, and he can help. All right, we're 26 minutes in. I've kind of run through Arkansas's roster now, talked a lot about Tennessee, talked about what's at stake. You can laugh at that and say, well, Arkansas season's over. No, it's not. And if Arkansas were to somehow win this game, 3 of your last 4 you've won, you picked up your second quad one win. And let's not forget A&M with this big win over Tennessee. A&M's in those 30s in net. If A&M can finish strong and Arkansas could, though, go and win on the road at A&M, but A&M can somehow win enough games to close out and end up in the top 30 in net, Arkansas would then have 2 quad one wins against the Aggies in that scenario, because the home win would count as one. There is a path for Arkansas, if it can win out, to still to find its way into an at-large bubble talk going into the SEC tournament, where it would probably still have work to do. Again, I don't think it's likely. I don't see that coming down the path. I've talked about how close Arkansas is to having an overall losing record on the season when the dust settles before you go into SEC play, and certainly it's not far away from having its second consecutive losing record in league play. So I'm showing both sides of it. After tonight, it may be very clear that we're no longer have any reason to talk about anything other than some stroke of luck in the SEC tournament, winning 5 games in 5 days to get the automatic bid as being the only path. And we can almost say that with a half grin as a pseudo joke. But we may know that answer here in a few hours, because I am going to have a post game and we're going to revisit a lot of this. We also need to start talking about NIL. Talking more and more about that as we get closer to the transfer portal season, when we start, even coaching carousel. NIL is going to matter more than ever than it has when we start looking at coaching carousels and decisions that are made by coaches who are looking to move on or are forced out, and how those things, because we know there's always domino effects. NIL is going to play big into that, I think, in this coaching hire more than we've ever seen. When we start looking at the landscape of college basketball, this could be a season where that impacts Arkansas, certainly. I think it just might. We'll see. I've talked some about that. We might talk more about that tonight in the postgame. If Arkansas wins, we may not talk as much about some of that stuff and focus on the win. There's just a lot, and we're going to be upping our coverage here at HogvilleNet YouTube Live as we start moving into heavier into portal season and that coaching carousel stuff, especially if Arkansas's not in the dance, which 90+% chance that's where it's headed. We're going to start looking ahead, and we're going to start bringing more coverage weekly to get into some stuff. By the way, last night we'll jump into recruiting real quick. I went to the Benton clinched the 5A South Championship, a conference title for Benton, beating a good Lake Hamilton team with a Division I player, Ty Robinson, who's pledged to Florida Atlantic, one of the better mid-major teams. Played in the Final Four last year, been a ranked team the last few years. But Terrion Burgess, 2025, 6'9" combo forward, battling the flu, had been to the doctor. 30 points, 12 of 18 from the field, 2 of 3 from 3, hit an NBA range 3 to beat the shot clock in this game in the second half. 4 of 6 at the line, 30 points, 14 rebounds, another monster double-double. He gets them all the time. This was against a quality opponent. Had 3 blocks, 3 assists, and a couple of steals in there to go with those big point scoring and rebounding numbers. And he's just a fearless competitor. His long strides, his athleticism, his length. You're starting to really see his confidence in his dribble setup game, his pull-up game from 3. I mentioned the efficiency. And here was a guy that wasn't playing at his strongest. He was battling the flu, and and put up that kind of night. They cut down the nets. It was a 72-68 win. It was a double-digit lead a lot for Benton, but Lake Hamilton valiantly fought back, got within one possession late in the final minute. It ended up being a 4-point loss for Lake Hamilton. But Terrion Burgess, big night. I mentioned Ty Robinson, 6'4" guard. I've always loved his game. He's putting on a lot of good strength and muscle. I mentioned he's going to FAU next year. He is a senior. But 30 points for him, had 5 triples in that game, had a big second half, really big second half. Scored 18 of those points in the second half and made most of his threes in that second half. But he was close to a triple-double, 11 tough rebounds, and he stuck his nose in there and poached out 8 steals. He had 2 or 3 more possessions with deflections defensively where the team didn't come up, where he didn't get a steal. But he was so active, and so 2 really good players last night. But I still think the Arkansas Razorbacks, I interviewed Terrion, that's out on Twitter. I tweeted that out earlier. He talked about a lot of the big programs that are recruiting him, some blue bloods in there, mentioning Kansas and some other ones. But he also mentions Arkansas always. I still think Arkansas is in really good shape with him moving forward. Now, things change in recruiting, we know that, but I've said that for a while. I still feel that way. But Terrion's ranked, 37th, according to 247 Sports, a high-level 4-star. He is a force on the high school level. He's been a force in spring and summer against national competition. But this is a team that swept defending state champ Pine Bluff, has now swept Lake Hamilton. Again, both teams have really, really good teams and players. So I'm confident the more I put eyes on Terrion Burgess, that he's a guy that would be, and it depends on opportunities and who else Arkansas would get out of the portal, and it's a year away because he's still got a senior season. But he's a guy that's an immediate impact and a guy that can help a team immediately. And usually when you look at Eric Melsman, when he brings in high school players, for the most part, guys 6'5" and up that he brings in from the high school ranks, or that are listed 6'5" and up, they don't have a problem seeing the floor and having a big role. That's for the most part. So he would check that box as well. I think he's a guy that can defend guards, ones, twos, and threes. They say, at 6'9", he's a good passer. He sees the floor well. He's an adequate ball handler. His ball skills emerging offensively. So as a 3-4 guy, he brings a lot of different matchup possibilities for whoever gets him. So I love him as a prospect. On Friday, I got to see in Maumelle, was at Maumelle's game and got to see Jacob Lanier from class of 2026. I'll be getting back out Friday night and haven't decided where I'm going yet, but I plan on going somewhere where Arkansas is recruiting an in-state prospect. So we'll have more on in-state recruiting at the high school level. And I'm really excited about portal season because that is coming up. And I think Arkansas, again, we know what they've done in the portal. NIL to me seems shaky right now. I think that's going to have an impact. I said that. So it's going to be very intriguing to see what Arkansas gets worked out as we start moving into portal season. But again, tonight, thank you for joining me now for pregame on HogvilleNet YouTube Live. I hope you'll join me tonight for the postgame live again from Bud Walton Arena. And hopefully we're talking about a Razorback winning a big game. That'd be a feather in the cap and a potential launching spot. Why do I think NIL is shaky? Well, from arguably the best source, well, it's not arguably, it is the best source in the men's basketball program. And I'm on the record as saying I'm told that it's second worst to, only Vanderbilt's worst. So we'll see if that changes. I would say that things are always fluid, and that could be something that changes in time for portal season. But as it stands now, that's what I'm told. So I answered that question. All right, we're going to sign off. I'm wrapping up, almost 35 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNet YouTube Live pregame. Arkansas hosts number 8 Tennessee tonight at Bud Walton Arena, 8 o'clock tip. ESPN2 has the coverage. We will have a postgame after the game. And the only other thing I would say is it's always great doing my pregames here at Jose's Bar and Grill. My friend Doug Allen owns this joint. Known him for a long time, way back in early 90s, and I've enjoyed this all year. This won't be my last time this year, but we're getting close. There's not a ton of home games left after tonight, only 3 more, so I've enjoyed every one of these. I've got a different vantage point today. I hope, it's been a lot of fun for me. We've had some folks in here from Hogville at different times, early in the year, not as much lately as Arkansas season has waned and not been very good, but it's always fun to be in here. So I want to thank Doug Allen and Jose's Bar and Grill in Tawnytown once again. But until tonight for postgame, I'll see you then.